Today, we are going to be talking about my delirium stories. Delirium is basically hallucinating a lot, and that happened to me quite a bit. I was on some heavy drugs, as you will find out soon, and I very vividly remember almost all my hallucinations. I have no idea how, but I remember them very vividly. So I'm going to make a video telling you guys about some of my crazy hallucinations from back in probably December and January when I was the most seduced they could make me. Even though no matter what drugs I was on, even paralytics, I was still trying to move around and get out of the bed because I wanted to go home. One of the first ones that I think happened, which this one happened I think over a period of a month or two, and it wasn't really much. It was basically, I would wake up every morning and walk around 9 Tower and go pick out which room in the ICU I wanted every single day. And the room that I picked was the room that I got for the day. Which, mind you, at the time, there was no way I could have walked at all. But I had so much of a will to walk that in my hallucinations, I would just get up, walk around 9 Tower, happy as can be, living my best life up in the hospital, going into whatever room I wanted for the day, hanging out, and these delirium stories honestly make my time in the hospital not very bad at all. I was relaxed, happy, having a good time the entire time I was there when I was hallucinating and everything. The whole hallucination of me waking up every day and going into whatever room I felt like for the day, that connects with our first story today, which I am going to call the forest room. So, 9 Tower, there's a long hallway and then another hallway, like a 90-degree angle, another hallway that goes back, and at the very end of that hallway that goes back is room 915, which, compared to all of the other ICU rooms on that floor, was probably double the size, if not 1.5 times the size of all the other rooms in the ICU, which this hallucination, I believe, happened before I even went in that room. I think I was still in room 9-2, because I was in that room for a long time. That was the room we celebrated my birthday in, a whole bunch of other stuff, and I believe I was in that room when I hallucinated this. So, it was just like any other day. I'd wake up, and I would go pick out my room for the day. And then I picked it, and then I went into room 914, and I went in there, and there was the normal hospital bed. It was almost like the hospital bed was flipped around from the wall that it should have been on. And in front of the bed was like a round table, I guess you could describe it as. And I think when I walked in there, I think at the time Giselle was my nurse. Freaking awesome. And she was curled up sleeping on this table. So something registered in my head. Oh, this is the bed that I'm getting on for the day. So I curl up and get on the round table, and I quickly become very frustrated with the size of the bed because I couldn't get comfortable. My feet were hanging off, and I didn't like it at all. So I was telling people I didn't like it, and eventually decided to move me to another room. So I don't exactly remember who carried me, but all of a sudden I was on a hospital bed type thing, and I believe it was 4 people, 2 on each side of the bed, carried me backwards, and then we started going down this almost sheer cliff. I mean, it was all green and grassy, kind of with video game graphics, but it was basically a sheer wall almost, maybe slightly sloped, but it was very, very steep. They just carried me back down the hill into what I believe was room 915. But it wasn't a hospital room. I was in this room surrounded by pine trees and woods. There's grass on the ground, and in the corner, I could still see the the window where the nurse's station was for the nurse that was watching over me that night. Which in reality I think it was like daytime or something, because I didn't have any clue what time it was or anything. So I could see the nurse's station, and I even remember being able to see the bricks in the hallway. They, for some reason, looked exactly like the cinder block things that were on my wall in the basement, and there was a door next to the nurse's station, obviously. But the slope that I came down was pretty much like all green. There was grass, and then there had to have been either 1 or 2 layers of pine trees, and then behind that, it was just dark. Mind you, I am in the middle of New York City, on the 9th floor of the hospital, not anywhere close to any woods, but I was. And then I think that was the night that I ripped my pacing wire out, which actually happened in the morning. Because I remember that night, I was picking at something somewhere on this region of my body, because I didn't like any of the stuff that was attached to me. I was either picking at my tegaderm that was over my catheter right here, because there was a period of time where this kept bleeding and it wouldn't clot up. It was either that catheter or it was my pacing wire that at one point in real life I literally just ripped it out. Mind you, it is attached to my heart when it's in. But I remember the nurse coming in right after I did that. This is all the hallucination. The nurse came in, was like, "Oh, you're not supposed to take that off. You need that. We'll fix it tomorrow." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I needed to keep that on or something." And then went back to sleep. And then I would have to guess the next morning, I woke up and went and chose my room again. But that was one of many odd hallucinations I had. Only one of which was stressful, but the rest of them, it was extremely peaceful. So this next one, I vividly remember this one, and some of the nurses remember this one, and my mom even remembers this one. So I'm calling this the Springs. So I had a feeding tube in my nose for the longest time, and I also had another tube in my nose at one point. I don't remember exactly what it was called. I had 2 different tubes going into my nose at one point, but I didn't know they were tubes. I thought they were springs. I had a yellow spring on this side and a red spring. I had a yellow spring on my left side and a red spring on my right side. The left spring was very long and went all the way down to my stomach. Mind you, that would not be possible all in real life. But the yellow spring didn't go back very far, and it was quite small. I remember at one point, one of the nurses took my yellow spring out of my nose and literally held it in her hand. I remember this so vividly that I can remember roughly the dimensions of it. I have a tape measure in here. It was like that big on my hand and like probably this wide, which I know is a terrible reference for you guys because I'm like 5-6 feet away from the camera. But it was yellow And it reminded me of like a spring that you'd find in car suspension or something like that, where it was very like thick and like hard to squeeze. I have no idea why. I think the red one I thought was thinner and it was much longer. But at one point, after they took the spring out, they put the yellow one back in my nose. And I remember feeling the pain of it going into my nose. It hurt like crazy. I remember it. And my mom and my nurses remember me talking about the springs in my nose multiple times. So this was like an ongoing thing for months. I legitimately thought that there were springs in my nose. But they were just feeding tubes and things like that. But it was very weird nonetheless. And the fact that I can remember the dimensions of it, like how big it was and what it looked like, it was very, very odd. Another small one that I have is I kept seeing like hundreds of bugs all over my room in the hospital, and they were like stink bug type things, and they didn't bother me whatsoever. I was like, oh look, there's bugs, whatever. And then at one point the nurses came in and I could hear them ripping the bugs off the pillow. Like, I remember the exact sound. They were up on the walls, all over the place. And my mom remembers me multiple times pointing around the room, pointing at bugs that were not there at all, but I saw that they were there. I also thought that the bathroom was the closet in my ICU room, which obviously I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. But there were multiple times where I was pointing at it and trying to get out of bed to go to the bathroom. Of course I never could. But, yeah. Another weird thing that I did. So, this one that I'm about to tell you is the only one that I remembered that really freaked me out, but it was only for a very short period of time, and then I was okay with it. So I'm going to read this because I wrote the entire thing in my phone. I was sitting in what I remember, like it looked almost like a dialysis chair. I don't know why. It was like tan or beige color, and it was leather, and I had my arm in like a large plastic Tupperware bin that had water in it. I have no idea why. And there was a small like white cloth on my arm, like one of those like dishcloths or something, which in reality of this whole situation, I was either getting an IV put in or having blood drawn or something like that. Something that was not a big deal whatsoever. So I was watching it, and all of a sudden the water started turning red with blood, and at that point I had thought my arm had been cut off from like probably around here on my arm. I thought my arm was cut off. And I kept looking at it really closely, trying to figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, in real life, I was panicking. In my hallucination, I was worried too, because I didn't know what was going on. And then after a while of looking at it, I noticed it was an optical illusion, and that my arm was actually okay. The rest of the time, I was completely happy. Went about my free time roaming 9 Tower, doing my typical daily routine of going to pick out my room every single day. During that event, I literally wrote on a piece of paper, "Can you please reattach my arm?" Not reattach my arm, like, "Can you please reattach my arm? Thank you," type thing. And then my mom asked me, arm did you write that with? And I'm right-handed, so I had to have written that with my right arm. My right arm was the one that I thought got cut off. I wrote it with my right arm when I thought my arm was cut off. Which is ridiculous. But that was another, like, big one. Which is hilarious. Another one that I remember, which is very odd. I have a spot on my hand, or wrist, where I had, like, an IV or something. And I remember at one point it had, like, dried pus on the outside of it. I don't know if that was a real or not. It might have been hallucination. But I remembered at one point, my mom, like, pulled what looked like a chicken egg out of the side of her abdomen. What she did with it, I have no idea. Why that happened, I have no idea. So part of the reason why I was having so many of those hallucinations, it had so many delirium experiences, which I have heard often that when they happen, they're very stressful and are horrible for people to go through. In normal Ethan fashion, I did the opposite thing, and they were a very peaceful, enjoyable time for me, and I genuinely enjoyed the experience of waking up every morning, walking to my room every single day, and meanwhile I'm laying in the hospital bed. I had no idea. But part of the reason I was hallucinating so much was because of just a few of the many very heavy drugs that I was on. I will go through 6 of them. Just 6 of them with you. There were a lot more that I was on. These 6 were Versed, Dex, which is basically an anesthetic, morphine, and fentanyl, and Vec, which Vec is a paralytic. It's meant to paralyze you. Half of the other ones are used in anesthesia practices. Guess who is moving around in the hospital bed the whole time, waving to people and trying to actively get up and escape the bed, while on all 5 of those drugs at the same time? I continued to move around the bed and try to get out while I was on all those heavy drugs. So that eventually led to me getting IV fed ketamine, which, if you don't know what ketamine is, it is often used in horse tranquilizers. And the best part about that is guess who continued to move around in the bed, wave to people, and try to escape the bed on ketamine? I did. Like, I don't think there was anything that they could have put me on that would have fully put me into an induced coma. Because I was partly unconscious, but there was always a part of me that was somewhat conscious throughout that entire time. And I think I just had so much determination to get out of the hospital that my body was like, oh, you want to give me this drug? I don't care. We're leaving. That's basically what it did. My body just kept giving out the middle finger the entire time I was at that hospital. It's like, hey, here's death. Oh, no, we're gonna keep going. Oh, here's death a second time. Oh, no, gonna keep going, not gonna affect me. Here's a stroke. That stroke, screw yourself. I'm just gonna keep going. Almost died a 3rd time after Christmas with another cardiac arrest. Thankfully, we were able to get that one under control before it happened. But, like, I don't know, it's crazy. A lot of that stuff I will get much more in depth into when I upload more videos on the transplant journey, which is taking me a while because each one of those videos takes me a very long time to edit and put together. Combine that with my anemia and all that fun stuff. But yeah, a lot more videos will be coming. I think we are going to do my kidney transplant in like April-ish of next year. Not really looking forward to that whatsoever. I bet you can guess why. We're going to try to make it as painless as possible, and another challenge I can face, or I can just non-stop kick ass and keep going. I hope you are doing great, and keep kicking ass every single day and building your dreams and everything. Like for the IS-300, I just ordered the IS-300 angle kit for drifting, which is literally Formula Drift spec, which is awesome. So yeah, always get out there, live life to its fullest, and keep making your dreams happen. I love you. Thank you for all your support. New merch coming out soon, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time I upload. Bye. Thank you.